Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship and watched the alien vessels move through space like silver knives. The alien fleet was beautiful to see. Each ship had a shiny hull that reflected starlight like mirrors. Energy shields glowed around them like soap bubbles in the sun. Their ships moved with grace and speed that made them look like dancers in the void. His own ship looked like junk next to them. The UES Liberty had patches of different metals welded onto her hull. Her paint was old and faded. Parts of her armor showed rust and burn marks from old battles. When her engines ran, they made noises like an old truck trying to start on a cold morning. She was one of 12 human ships in the big fleet, and every alien who saw them seemed to think they were jokes. Lieutenant Amy Carter walked over from her station. She kept her face blank, but Jake could tell she was upset about something. Amy had been with him for 5 years, and he knew all her expressions. "Sir, we got another message from the alien flagship. Commander Zex wants to talk about our part in tomorrow's battle." Jake did not want to have this conversation again. The aliens had been very clear about what they thought of human ships. They said the words politely, but the meaning was always the same. Humans did not belong here. "Put him on the screen, Amy." The main display showed Commander Zex of the Altarian fleet. His people were tall and thin with blue skin and 4 arms. They came from a world with heavy gravity, which made them strong and proud. They also made them think they were better than everyone else. "Captain Morrison," Zex said in his musical voice, "I hope your ship is ready for tomorrow's fight." "We are ready, Commander." "Good to hear." Zex looked at something off-screen, probably data about the human fleet. "Though I must say, your weapons are quite old. Those bullet guns you use are simple, but they worked well for you in the past, I am sure." Behind Jake, Chief Engineer Ben Clark made an angry sound under his breath. Ben had spent 20 years keeping their ship running with spare parts and hard work. He did not like anyone saying bad things about his ship. "Our weapons work fine, Commander." "Against other old ships, yes. But tomorrow we fight the hegemony. Their shields stop energy weapons and their armor is very strong. I would hate to see humans die because their guns are too weak." The message ended, leaving the bridge quiet. Jake could see how Zex's words affected his crew. They had heard this kind of talk for 3 years now. Every alien species said the same thing in different ways. Humans were too primitive to fight real battles. "Captain," came the rough voice of Weapons Officer Roy Adams. "Can I speak freely?" "Always, Roy. These fancy aliens with their energy, guns and perfect ships have never fought anyone who fights dirty. They never had to fix things with whatever they could find instead of what they wanted." Roy's old face showed the kind of stubborn anger that had helped humans survive for thousands of years. "Maybe someone should show them what real fighting looks like." Jake nodded. He understood Roy's anger. The hegemony had been attacking worlds for months now. They were a race of machine people from far away who wanted to take over everything. Every time the Council fleet fought them, the good guys lost. Their advanced energy weapons did nothing against hegemony shields. "Sir," called Navigator Lisa Brooks from her station, "we just got the final battle orders. We fight the hegemony at the Kepler system in 18 hours. "What do we do?" "Stay in the back. We cover the main fleet if they have to run away." Jake was not surprised. The Council made it clear that human ships were only good for getting shot while the important ships escaped. "All hands, this is the captain," Jake said over the ship's speakers. "Tomorrow we go into battle with the most advanced fleet in the galaxy. They have weapons that can split atoms. They have shields that can stop stars. They have computers that can think faster than gods. But they do not have what we have." He looked around at his crew. These were not super soldiers or genetically perfect people. They were ordinary humans who had volunteered to serve in space. They carried with them all the stubbornness and cleverness that had gotten humanity this far. They do not know that every part of this ship was built by human hands and fixed by human sweat and powered by human will. When their perfect technology breaks down, and it will break down, we will still be here. Because we know that the best weapon is not always the newest one. Sometimes it is just the one that works when everything else fails. The crew sat up straighter. Some of them smiled for the first time that day. Ben's voice came over the speakers from the engine room. "Captain, This old ship is ready for whatever they throw at us. Her guns might be simple, but they hit what we aim at. That is all we need, Ben. That is all we ever needed. The human fleet moved into position for the coming battle. Jake watched the alien ships with their perfect formations and flawless coordination. They looked like they could conquer the universe without breaking a sweat. But Jake had a feeling that tomorrow would change everything. The galaxy was about to learn something that humans had known for a long time. It was not the size of your ship or how fancy your weapons were that won battles. It was the determination of the people who used them. The aliens thought human ships were rusty old junk. Tomorrow, one of those rusty old ships was going to fire, a shot that changed the way everyone thought about war. Jake could feel it in his bones. The universe was about to get a lesson in human stubborn thinking. The Liberty groaned and creaked as she moved through space, her old engines working hard to keep up with the sleek alien vessels. She looked like she barely belonged here among all the advanced technology and perfect engineering. But she had something the other ships did not have. She had a human crew who refused to quit, no matter how bad things got. And sometimes, that was all you needed to change the course of history. The Kepler system looked like a graveyard. 3 dead planets hung in space like burned stones. The hegemony had been here for months, sucking the life out of everything they could find. Giant machines the size of moons moved between the worlds, breaking them down piece by piece. Captain Jake Morrison stared at the enemy fleet on his screen. Red dots showed where the hegemony ships waited for them. Each enemy vessel looked like a black knife made of metal and hate. They did not reflect light like normal ships. Instead, they seemed to eat light, making dark holes in space that hurt to look at. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Amy Carter, "we count about 300 enemy ships. They range from small fighters to big dreadnoughts. How many do we have?" 450 council ships plus our 12 human vessels. The numbers looked good, but Jake knew numbers had not helped in the past fights. The hegemony had won every battle so far, no matter how many ships the council sent against them. "All council ships, this is Admiral Korth of the flagship Eternal Glory," came the voice of the fleet commander. "Get ready to fight. Human ships will stay in Sector 7 and wait for orders." Sector 7 was at the very back of the formation, far from the real fighting. Jake bit back the angry words he wanted to say and just confirmed the order. Around him, his crew looked frustrated but not surprised. The first attack began at long range. The council ships fired their energy weapons across space. Bright beams of plasma and exotic particles reached out like fingers of light. They hit the hegemony ships with flashes that briefly outshone the system's sun, but nothing happened. The enemy ships kept coming like the energy beams were just warm rain. "Their shields are learning," said Navigator Lisa Brooks, her voice tight with fear. "The hegemony ships are studying our weapons and changing their defenses in real time." Jake watched in growing horror as the Council's perfect weapons proved useless against an enemy that could learn faster than any computer. Within minutes, the hegemony ships were flying through the energy barrage like it was not even there. When the enemy fired back, Council ships simply disappeared. No explosion, no wreckage, just there 1 second and gone the next. The hegemony weapons seemed to erase ships from existence. "Dear God," whispered Weapons Officer Roy Adams. "They are not destroying those ships. They are deleting them." The beautiful Council formation fell apart as ship after ship vanished under the hegemony attack. Captains who had trained for decades found themselves helpless against an enemy their weapons could not touch. "All ships, emergency retreat." Admiral Korth's voice had lost its confidence. "Fall back to secondary positions." But there was nowhere to go. The hegemony ships were faster and more maneuverable than anything the Council had. What started as a battle was becoming a massacre. "Captain," Amy's voice shook, "the flagship is calling for help from anyone who can fight." Jake looked at his tactical screen. The flagship was surrounded by enemy vessels, its shields failing under attacks it could not answer. Around it, the pride of the galactic fleet was being cut down like wheat. "Sir," came Chief Engineer Ben Clark's voice from below, "those hegemony ships are adapting to energy weapons, but I do not see any adaptation for solid objects hitting them." Jake felt understanding hit him like lightning. They are designed to fight enemies like the Council, enemies who use energy weapons and fancy technology, but not enemies who still use good old bullets, Roy added with a mean smile. Jake opened the radio to the other human ships. All vessels, this is Morrison. I think it is time we reminded everyone why humans are still here. Form up on the Liberty. And get ready for close combat. Jake, this is Captain Dan Rodriguez on the Freedom Bell, came a familiar voice. Are you saying we should charge a bigger enemy force with weaker weapons? That is exactly what I am saying, Dan. Unless you have a better idea. There was a pause, then Dan laughed. Hell, Jake. When has having a better idea ever stopped us before? The 12 human ships began to move. Their formation was loose and flexible compared to the rigid lines of the Council fleet. They were not the fastest ships in the galaxy, or the strongest or the most advanced. But they had human crews, and humans had learned long ago that sometimes the best plan was the one your enemy never expected. All human ships, target the hegemony vessels attacking the flagship. Use regular weapons only. Let us see how well their smart shields handle a metal slug moving at 10% of light speed. The human ships dove into the heart of the battle, their weapons charged with the distinctive sound of magnetic launchers. Behind them, the Council ships kept firing their useless energy weapons at an enemy that had learned to ignore them completely. But the hegemony had not learned to ignore humanity. The first railgun shots hit the enemy ships like hammers from heaven. The smart shields that had laughed off plasma beams and quantum weapons were not designed to handle solid metal moving at impossible speeds. The hegemony ships staggered under impacts they could not adapt to. Direct hit on the lead enemy dreadnought, Roy reported with savage joy. Their shields are down and they are bleeding air. Multiple hits confirmed, added Lisa. The enemy formation is breaking up. For the first time in the battle, the hegemony ships seemed confused. Their adaptive technology could not find a pattern to counter. They were facing weapons that worked on laws as old as physics itself. Mass times velocity equals force, and two objects cannot be in the same place at the same time. This is Admiral Korth to all human ships, came the alien commander's voice, filled with something Jake had never heard before. Respect. Keep attacking. You found their weakness. The battle began to turn as the human ships pressed their attack. Their weapons could not be adapted to or analyzed by the hegemony smart systems. Each railgun slug, each missile, each kinetic round was a reminder that sometimes the oldest solutions were the best ones. Jake, came Dan Rodriguez's voice over the radio. We got their attention now. Half the hegemony fleet is coming for us. Jake looked at his screen and felt cold fear in his stomach. The enemy was adapting again, not with technology, but with tactics. If they could not counter human weapons, they would just overwhelm the human ships with numbers. All human ships scatter and use the wreckage for cover. Keep hitting them with everything we have. The 12 human ships spread out through the debris of the battle, using the hulks of destroyed Council vessels as shields while they played a deadly game with the hegemony fleet. They were outnumbered 30-1, but they had something the enemy did not expect: the ability to think creatively when everything was going wrong. Roy, target their command ship, the big one in the center. Sir, that thing is huge. Our weapons cannot do enough damage. We do not need to destroy it, Roy. We just need to hurt it enough to make them think twice. The Liberty came around the wreckage of a Council cruiser, her railguns charging for what might be the most important shot in human history. In the distance, the hegemony command ship loomed like a dark planet, its weapons already turning to track the small human vessel that dared to challenge it. Firing, Roy announced, and the Liberty shook as her main guns spoke with the voice of thunder. The railgun shells hit the hegemony command ship like falling stars. Each impact sent shockwaves through the massive black hull. For a moment, the great vessel seemed to shake. Its perfect dark surface now had glowing holes where the metal slugs had punched through shields that were never built to stop solid objects. Direct hits confirmed, Weapons Officer Roy Adams said with amazement in his voice. We actually hurt that thing. Captain Jake Morrison watched his tactical display as the enemy fleet reacted to the surprise attack. The hegemony ships were changing their positions. Their movements no longer showed the perfect coordination they had before. For the first time since the battle started, they seemed uncertain. All human ships, this is Morrison. Keep attacking. Hit them fast and keep moving. Do not give them time to learn. The 12 human ships spread out through the wreckage field. Their weapons worked overtime as they poured fire into the confused enemy formation. Each ship fought, with the desperation of being badly outnumbered, using every trick their crews had learned in years of service. The UES Constitution, under Captain Mary Foster's command, used the wreck of a Council dreadnought to hide her approach. Then she unleashed every missile she had at point-blank range. The UES Patriot, commanded by Captain Steve Wilson, dropped straight down through the enemy formation while her guns blazed, performing a move that would have been impossible for the more advanced alien ships. "This is Admiral Korth to Captain Morrison," came the alien fleet commander's voice over the radio. "Your attack has broken their coordination. The Council fleet is getting ready to fight again." Jake felt a surge of hope. If the Council ships could get back into the battle, they might actually have a chance. But even as he watched, he could see the hegemony ships starting to adapt once more. Their formations were getting tighter. Their movements were becoming more coordinated again. "Amy, patch me through to the entire fleet. Channel open, sir. All Council ships, this is Captain Morrison. The enemy's weakness is not their shields or their weapons, it is their predictability. They are machines, and machines think in patterns. Break those patterns, and you break them." Lieutenant Lisa Brooks looked up from her navigation console, her face pale. "Sir, I am detecting massive energy buildup from the Hegemony command ship. Whatever we did to it, they are getting ready to hit back hard." The great vessel at the center of the enemy formation began to glow with an inner light that seemed to bend space around it. Smaller Hegemony ships were forming a protective shell around their flagship. Their weapons were powering up for what looked like a coordinated strike that would wipe out everything in range. "All human ships, scatter pattern Delta. Do not let them focus their fire on us." But even as the human ships spread out, Jake knew they were running out of time. The Hegemony had figured them out now, learned from their tactics. The element of surprise was gone, and without it, 12 ships could not hold off an entire fleet. "Captain," came Chief Engineer Ben Clark's voice from the engine room, "we have got a problem. The main reactor is running too hot, and I am seeing cracks in the port railgun assembly. We cannot keep this up much longer." Jake closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of command on his shoulders. Around him, he could hear the sounds of his ship fighting for her life. The whine of charging weapons, the rumble of the engines, the distant crash of debris hitting the hull. "Sir," Amy Miller's voice cut through his thoughts. "We are getting a transmission from the Hegemony command ship." "Put it through." The main screen filled with an image that made several crew members step back in alarm. The Hegemony commander looked almost human but wrong in every detail. Its skin was metallic gray. Its eyes were pure silver. When it spoke, its voice sounded like a machine trying to be human. "I am Hegemon Prime of the 3rd Expansion Fleet," it said, each word perfectly clear but somehow empty. "You are the species, called human. I am Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earthship Liberty. Your weapons are primitive, your technology is old, your ships are weak in every way we can measure." The Hegemon's silver eyes seemed to look directly at Jake. "Yet you have damaged my vessel. Explain this contradiction." Jake found himself face to face with an intelligence that could probably calculate the movement of stars, but could not understand why old weapons had broken its perfect defenses. He realized that the Hegemony's greatest strength was also their greatest weakness. They could adapt and optimize, but they could not understand chaos. "Because we do not fight fair," Jake said. Simply, the Hegemon tilted its head, processing this answer. "Clarification required. All combat follows tactical and strategic rules. There is no variable called fair in our calculations. That is your problem right there. You think war is about calculations and optimization and perfect tactics. But sometimes war is about being too stupid to know when you are beaten, too stubborn to give up, and too angry to care about the odds. This is not logical. No, it is not, and that is exactly why it works." The transmission ended suddenly, but Jake could see the effect his words had on the enemy formation. The Hegemony ships were hesitating. Their movements were less certain. For creatures that relied on logic and calculation, the concept of illogical behavior was genuinely confusing. All human ships, Jake announced over the radio. Prepare for Operation Crazy Ivan. It is time to show these machines what happens when humans stop being reasonable. Jake, came Dan Rodriguez's voice from the Freedom Bell. Remind me again what Operation Crazy Ivan involves? Every ship charges the enemy formation at the same time. No coordination, no tactical planning, just pure human stubbornness. We hit them with everything we have and see what happens. There was a pause. Then Dan's laughter came over the radio. I love it. It is completely insane. Exactly. They cannot adapt to insanity because insanity does not follow rules. The 12 human ships turned toward the enemy formation as one, their engines burning at maximum power. They came in from all directions at once, their weapons firing without coordination or pattern. The UES Liberty dove straight at the command ship, her railguns blazing. The UES Freedom Bell came in from the side, launching every missile she carried. The UES Constitution performed a barrel roll that would have been suicide for any other vessel, her guns tracking targets that should have been impossible to hit. The Hegemony fleet tried to respond, but their perfect tactical systems could not cope with attacks that had no tactical logic. Ships that should have been coordinating their assault were instead acting like 12 separate unconnected entities, each following its own path through the battle. This is impossible, came the Hegemon's voice over an open channel. It's perfect. Composure finally cracking. Your tactics violate every principle of warfare. Your formations have no structure, your strategy has no sense. Welcome to fighting humans, Jake replied as the Liberty's guns found their mark again, sending another wave of kinetic rounds into the enemy command ship. We have been doing impossible things for so long, we have forgotten they are supposed to be impossible. The Hegemony formation began to break apart as their coordination systems failed to cope with the chaotic human assault. Ships that had moved in perfect synchronization now found themselves unable to predict or counter attacks that followed no pattern at all. All Council ships, Admiral Korth's voice rang out across the communication channels. Resume offensive operations. Target the disrupted enemy units. The tide of battle turned as the Council fleet rejoined the fight. Their energy weapons finally found targets whose shields had been damaged by kinetic impacts. The combination of advanced alien technology and human unpredictability proved devastating to an enemy that had been designed to counter only one or the other. But the battle was far from over. Even as the Hegemony fleet began to retreat, Jake could see new contacts appearing on the edge of the system. More enemy ships were coming, and humanity had just announced its presence to a galaxy that might not be ready for what that meant. Sir, Amy reported, we are getting a priority transmission from Earth Command. Put it through. The face of Admiral Patricia Hayes appeared on the screen, her expression serious. Jake, we have been monitoring the battle. The entire galaxy knows what happened here today. Every species in the Council is going to want to know how a handful of primitive human ships turned the tide of a battle that their advanced fleets were losing. Jake looked around his bridge, seeing the exhausted but determined faces of his crew. They had just proven that humanity belonged among the stars, but he had a feeling that was only the beginning of their challenges. Admiral, I think, we are about to find out that being underestimated was the easy part. 3 days after the Battle of Kepler, Captain Jake Morrison found himself standing in the most important meeting room in the galaxy. The Council chambers on Nexus Prime had hosted diplomatic talks for over 1,000 years. Its crystal walls had seen treaties, alliances, and declarations that shaped the course of galactic civilization. Today, those same walls would witness something completely new. Humanity was about to be formally recognized as a major military power. The representatives will see you now, Captain, announced the protocol robot, its voice perfectly polite. Jake straightened his uniform and walked through the massive doors. Lieutenant Amy Carter walked beside him, carrying a data pad with the official battle reports. The circular chamber beyond was filled with representatives from dozens of species, each more alien than the last. At the center of the room, A holographic display showed the tactical readout from the Kepler battle, frozen at the moment when the first human railgun rounds had hit the Hegemony command ship. "Captain Morrison," came the musical voice of Chancellor Worth the Altarian who served as the Council's current leader. "The Council has reviewed your battle reports with great interest. We are impressed by your species' performance." Impressed. Jake almost smiled at the diplomatic understatement. The human fleet had single-handedly turned a complete defeat into a strategic victory, using weapons that every other species had dismissed as worthless. The recordings of the battle had been studied by military experts across the galaxy, all trying to understand how 12 primitive ships had done what 400 advanced vessels could not. "Thank you, Chancellor. My crew and I were honored to serve alongside the Council fleet." Indeed. Chancellor Vorth's 6 eyes focused on the tactical display. "Your use of kinetic weapons against hegemony adaptive shields was innovative. Our military advisors are curious about your tactical doctrine." "It is simple, sir. We use what works." A ripple of what might have been laughter passed through the assembled delegates. The Corvani representative, a massive creature that looked like a cross between a bear and a rhinoceros, leaned forward in his chair. "Captain Morrison, your species joined the Council only 3 years ago. Your technology is centuries behind our own. By all logical analysis, your ships should have been destroyed in the opening minutes of the engagement. Yet somehow, you not only survived but dealt decisive damage to an enemy that had proven immune to our most advanced weapons. Please explain this contradiction." Jake looked around the chamber, seeing faces that ranged from curiosity to suspicion to what he was beginning to recognize as the galactic equivalent of respect. These beings had built an interstellar civilization based on logic, efficiency, and technological superiority. The idea that crude weapons could be more effective than sophisticated ones challenged everything they believed about warfare. "With respect, Counselor, I think you are asking the wrong question. You want to know how our weapons worked when yours did not. But the real question is why your weapons did not work when they should have." The chamber fell silent. Chancellor Vorth's expression became unreadable, which Jake had learned was the Altarian equivalent of intense concentration. "Elaborate, Captain." "The Hegemony had been studying you for years before they attacked. They knew your weapons, your tactics, your technology. They designed their defenses specifically to counter everything the Council could throw at them." Jake gestured toward the tactical display. "But they had never encountered humans before. They had no data on our weapons, no algorithms to counter our tactics, no way to predict what we would do because we do things that do not make tactical sense, such as charging a superior force with inferior weapons," observed the Thraxian delegate, her insect-like features clicking with what Jake had learned was amusement. "Exactly. From a logical standpoint, our attack should have been suicide. The Hegemony's computers agreed with that assessment, which is why they were not prepared for it." Amy Miller stepped forward, activating her datapad. "If I may, Captain, I would like to show the Council our analysis of the engagement." The holographic display shifted, showing the battle from a different perspective. Instead of the tactical overview that emphasized ships and formations, this view focused on decision-making patterns and response times. The Hegemony fleet operated with perfect coordination for the first phase of the battle, Amy explained. Their response time to Council tactics averaged 2.3 seconds, well within their adaptive parameters. But when the human fleet engaged, their response time increased to over 30 seconds, and their coordination began to break down. "Why?" asked the Chancellor. "Because their command systems could not process illogical behavior. When the UES Constitution performed a barrel roll while under fire, the Hegemony computer spent 27 seconds trying to calculate the tactical advantage of such a maneuver. When they could not find one, they assumed it was a feint and prepared for an attack that never came. Meanwhile, Jake continued, Captain Foster was just trying to avoid getting shot, using a maneuver she had learned in pilot training 20 years ago. No tactical purpose, no strategic objective, just human instinct and reflexes." The delegates exchanged glances that Jake was beginning to recognize as the galactic equivalent of nervous laughter. The idea that their greatest military victory, in decades had been achieved through instinct rather than planning, was clearly disturbing to species that had built their entire civilization on logical principles. "Captain," said the Vegan representative, Admiral Korth himself, "the Council faces a strategic decision. The hegemony fleet has retreated, but our intelligence suggests they are regrouping for a larger assault. We need to develop new tactics to counter their adaptive technology. Our military analysts have studied your battle footage extensively," added the Corvani delegate. "They believe that human tactical unpredictability could be integrated into Council doctrine. We would like to request that Earth provide military advisors to help train our fleets in what you call illogical warfare." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. The Council was not just asking for advice, they were asking humanity to teach them how to be human. The implications were staggering. "Chancellor, with respect, I do not think you understand what you are asking. Human tactics are not just about being unpredictable. They are about accepting risk, making decisions without complete information, and sometimes doing things that you know are probably going to get you killed because they are the only option you have left. Are you saying that illogical tactics cannot be taught? I am saying that illogical tactics are not tactics at all. They are desperation, instinct, and stubbornness. You cannot program them into a computer or teach them in a classroom. They come from being human, and I am not sure that is something you want to learn." The chamber fell silent as the delegates considered his words. Finally, Chancellor Vorth spoke. "Captain Morrison, the Council has made a decision. Effective immediately, humanity is being granted full military partnership status within the Galactic Defense Alliance. Earth will be provided with access to advanced technology and manufacturing facilities to upgrade your fleet." Jake felt Amy stiffen beside him. Full military partnership was something humanity had been working toward for years, a status that would transform Earth from a junior member to a major galactic power. "Additionally," the Chancellor continued, "the Council is requesting that human officers be assigned to command positions within the Alliance fleet. Your species' unique approach to warfare has proven invaluable, and we believe it should be more widely utilized." "Sir," Jake said carefully, "are you asking us to teach your people to fight like humans?" "No, Captain. We are asking you to fight alongside us as humans. There is, we have learned, a significant difference." As the formal ceremony concluded and the delegates began to file out of the chamber, Admiral Korth approached Jake with an expression that the human commander was finally beginning to read as respect. "Captain, I owe you an apology. When your ships first joined our fleet, I believed you were little more than an obsolete curiosity. I was wrong. Admiral, 3 days ago you were right. Our ships are obsolete, our weapons are primitive, and our technology is centuries behind yours. None of that has changed. But," Jake smiled, thinking of the crew of the Liberty and the 11 other ships that had changed the course of galactic history. "But sometimes being obsolete means you are also unpredictable, and sometimes being primitive means you are also adaptable. We may not have your advanced technology, but we have something else, which is the absolute certainty that no matter how bad things get, we can probably make them worse for the other guy." Admiral Korth made the sound that Jake had learned was vegan laughter. "Captain, I believe the galaxy is about to become a much more interesting place." As they walked out of the council chambers together, Jake could not help but agree. Humanity had spent 3 years trying to prove they belonged among the stars. Now they had proven it in the most definitive way possible by winning a battle that everyone else had thought was unwinnable. But he had a feeling that was just the beginning. The hegemony would be back, and next time they would be prepared for human unpredictability. The real test would come when humanity had to prove that their victory at Kepler was not just luck, but the opening move in a new kind of warfare that the galaxy had never seen before. 6 months after the Battle of Kepler, the galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty, but the ship around him looked very different from the vessel that had limped into battle half a year ago. The Council's promise of technology upgrades had been fulfilled beyond his wildest dreams. The bridge still looked basically human. It was built for function rather than beauty, designed for efficiency rather than show. But now alien technology hummed quietly beneath familiar surfaces. Quantum computers made the ship's systems faster while keeping the simple controls that human crews understood. Energy shields worked alongside the traditional armor plating, and the weapon systems now included both the railguns that had made humanity famous and new hybrid systems that combined human kinetic principles with alien energy technology. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Amy Carter from her upgraded communications console, "we are receiving final approach vectors from Nexus Defense Command. The joint fleet exercises will begin in 30 minutes. Jake nodded, studying the tactical display that showed the assembled fleet. 200 ships from across the galaxy hung in formation around Nexus Prime, but this was not the same kind of fleet that had been destroyed at Kepler. The rigid hierarchies and perfect formations of the old Council fleet had been replaced by something entirely new. Mixed squadrons of human and alien vessels moved in flexible patterns that would have been impossible under the old doctrine. A Corvini heavy cruiser flew alongside the UES Constitution, its massive bulk complemented by the smaller ship's agility. Altarian destroyers had been modified with human-designed kinetic weapons, while human frigates carried alien energy shields and quantum computers. "Status report from the fleet," Amy continued. "All vessels report ready for exercise commencement. Admiral Rodriguez sends his regards and asks if you are ready to show the brass how it is really done." Jake smiled at the mention of his old friend. Dan Rodriguez had been promoted to admiral after Kepler, tasked with integrating human tactical doctrine throughout the Allied fleet. It had been a challenging assignment, teaching alien species to think like humans while learning to use their advanced technology effectively. "Tell Dan we are ready for whatever they throw at us." The joint exercises had become a regular occurrence, designed to test the new integrated tactics that had emerged from humanity's unexpected victory. The old Council doctrine of technological superiority had been abandoned in favor of something more flexible, more adaptive, and considerably more chaotic. "All ships, this is Fleet Admiral Korth," came the familiar voice of the former Council commander, now promoted to oversee the new Allied Defense Force. "Exercise parameters are being transmitted now. The scenario involves a hegemony fleet attempting to capture the Nexus system. Human tactical doctrine is authorized for all participating vessels." Jake watched as the exercise began. The mock enemy fleet, controlled by advanced computer systems, moved with the same perfect coordination that had characterized the real hegemony forces at Kepler. Their formations were flawless, their movements precise, their tactics optimized for maximum efficiency. The Allied response was anything but perfect. Ships broke formation without warning, executed maneuvers that made no tactical sense, and attacked targets in patterns that defied military logic. To an outside observer, it would have looked like complete chaos. But there was method to the madness. The Altarian destroyer squadron suddenly scattered like frightened fish, drawing the enemy's attention while a group of human frigates approached from an unexpected angle. A Corvini heavy cruiser performed what could only be described as a combat pirouette, spinning on its axis while its weapons blazed in all directions. Human ships dove through debris fields that should have been impassable, using wrecked vessels as shields while they closed to point-blank range. "Exercise enemy is showing signs of tactical confusion," reported Navigation Officer Lisa Brooks. "Their response time to our maneuvers has increased by 40%. "Just like the real thing," Jake observed with satisfaction. "Machines think in patterns. Break the patterns and you break the machines." The exercise continued for 2 hours, with the Allied fleet demonstrating tactics that would have been considered impossible just 6 months earlier. Ships that had once moved in rigid formations now flowed like water around obstacles. Captains, who had been trained to follow precise protocols, now improvised based on instinct and experience. "Exercise concluded," Admiral Korth announced. "All ships return to standard formation. Preliminary analysis indicates a 94% success rate against simulated hegemony forces." Jake felt a surge of pride. The galaxy had learned to fight like humans, and the results spoke for themselves. But even as he celebrated the victory, he knew that the real test was still to come. "Sir," Amy's voice cut through his thoughts. "We are receiving a priority transmission from Deep Space Monitoring Station Alpha 7. They are detecting massive energy signatures on the edge of the galaxy. The celebration on the bridge died instantly. Everyone knew what massive energy signatures on the edge of the galaxy meant. The hegemony was coming back. Put it through to the main screen. The image that appeared made Jake's blood run cold. Hundreds of ships, each larger than anything they had faced at Kepler, moved through space in perfect formation. But these were not the same hegemony vessels they had fought before. These ships had been modified, adapted, evolved. They had learned from their defeat, just as surely as the Alliance had learned from their victory. "Admiral Korth, to all ships," came the fleet, commander's voice tense with the gravity of the situation. "We are detecting a hegemony invasion fleet approximately 100 times larger than the force we encountered at Kepler. All vessels prepare for immediate deployment to the outer rim." Jake felt the familiar weight of command settling on his shoulders, but it felt different now. He was not just the captain of a single ship anymore. He was part of something larger, something that had grown from humanity's stubborn refusal to accept defeat. "Amy, signal the fleet. All ships, prepare for departure. We have a war to finish." As the ships began to move, forming up in the loose, flexible formations that had become the new standard, Jake allowed himself a moment of reflection. 6 months ago, human ships had been mocked as rusty old relics. Now those same principles of durability, adaptability, and sheer stubborn determination were being copied by every race in the galaxy. The Liberty moved through space, her hull still bearing the scars of the Battle of Kepler, but her systems upgraded with the best technology the galaxy had to offer. Around her, 200 ships moved in formations that would have been impossible under the old rigid doctrines. They moved like a living thing, adapting and flowing and changing as the situation demanded. "Sir," Lisa reported from her station, "we are approaching the jump point. All ships report ready for hyperspace transition." "Take us out, Lisa. It is time to show the hegemony what the galaxy has learned." The fleet jumped to hyperspace, carrying with them the hopes of dozens of worlds and the promise of a new way of thinking about war itself. Behind them, the training grounds of Nexus Prime sat empty, waiting for the next generation of officers to learn the lessons that humanity had taught the galaxy. In the depths of space, the hegemony waited with their evolved ships and their adapted tactics. They had learned from their defeat at Kepler, upgraded their technology, and modified their strategies. They thought they were ready for anything the Alliance could throw at them. They had no idea that the Alliance had learned something far more dangerous than new technology or better tactics. They had learned to think like humans. They had learned that the best weapon was not always the most advanced one, but the one that worked when everything else failed. They had learned that sometimes the most effective strategy was the one that made no sense at all. The war was far from over, but for the first time since it had begun, the galaxy was not just fighting to survive. They were fighting to win, and they were fighting with weapons that the hegemony could never fully understand or completely counter. Human weapons, human tactics, human determination. The rusty old ships had fired their shot and changed everything. Now it was time to prove that the change was permanent. The galaxy would never be the same again, and Jake Morrison could not have been more proud to be part of the transformation. Humanity had not just joined the galactic community. They had fundamentally altered what it meant to be part of it. The universe was about to learn what humans had always known. Sometimes the best weapon is not the newest one. Sometimes it is just the one that refuses to break.